looking at what is going on in the Middle East, well, the Foreign Secretary has now flown to Saudi Arabia. He's continuing diplomatic efforts to try to prevent an escalation in the Israel-Hamas conflict and to get aid into Gaza.
It follows rumours of a 3-day humanitarian pause in exchange for the release of 12 hostages, something that's been denied by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Overnight, the United States launched new attacks against Hamas backing Iranian military facilities in Syria.
Not to be outdone, an American drone was also shot down by the Iran-affiliated Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Back on the ground, the Israeli military says 50,000 Palestinians were able to flee Gaza City yesterday as forces again opened up a safe passage south.
Well, it follows accusations of war crimes by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk. He visited the Rafah crossing with Gaza yesterday.
These are the gates to a living nightmare. A nightmare where people have been suffocating under persistent bombardment, mourning their families, struggling for water, for food, for electricity and fuel. The collective punishment by Israel of Palestinian civilians is also a war crime, as is unlawful, forcible evacuation of civilians.
OK, let's talk to journalist Jotam Confino, who joins us now from Tel Aviv. Jotam, first and foremost, bring us up to date with what is happening within Israel and Gaza.
So Israel is continuing to dismantle as much Hamas infrastructure as possible. It says that it has destroyed 130 tunnel shafts, which is obviously the biggest challenge for Israel, is the tunnels. In addition to that, it keeps assassinating senior Hamas commanders, most of whom have had some sort of a direct responsibility for the October 7 massacre. And in the meantime, the safe passage is continuing to be open for a few hours every day. We see the visuals coming out of Gaza with just hundreds of people walking with white flags in the air. And this is supposed to continue unless Hamas puts a stop to it, because it's not in their interest to have all these civilians leaving. And other than that, there's also an escalation, like you mentioned, in Syria. Apparently 12 people have been killed in the Azor, which is the eastern part of Syria, and just outside Damascus in Israeli and American airstrikes. So it's escalating slowly but surely.
And what of this rumour of a 3-day pause in exchange for hostages? I know that Benjamin Netanyahu has already poo-pooed it, but I just want to know where this rumour emerged from and if this is something that we might expect to see in the future, perhaps.
Yeah, so this is something that's clearly been leaked by Hamas. Hamas has an interest in basically getting the hopes up for Israeli families and families abroad, American, Brits, because they want to keep this fresh. They want to put so much pressure on Israel as possible with regard to international pressure on Israel so that there can be a ceasefire. Now, Israel has agreed that it would be open to a tactical humanitarian pause, but if we're talking about hostages, there's one demand from Israel, and that is to release all hostages in return for a possible ceasefire. Now, 12 hostages or 15 hostages, that I think there's a reason why the Israeli government is discussing this, because it doesn't want to discuss or to negotiate out in the open. I don't think any country would do that. There might be something to it, but the official stance is, of course, we're not negotiating in public. This is being done behind closed doors. And this was leaked to Arabic media thing about 12 hostages.
I mean, it's very difficult to understand how to move forward on this when you look at, I know it was a couple of days ago now, but one of the Hamas leadership even denying that civilians were targeted in Israel on October the 7th. I mean, it's when you bring all that into context that you can see perhaps the frustration of Israel in saying we're not going to stop until Hamas is finished.
So it's hopeless. If you can't even agree on what happened, you're living in a post-factual world. It's the same as saying the Holocaust didn't happen. What is the starting point, really? And for Israelis to hear the United Nations giving so much attention to a possible ceasefire without suggesting any sort of solution to the problem of having a terrorist organization in the day after, to them it's shocking. Especially when you think about the most recent huge terror attack in recent history, which was 9/11. Nobody questioned what should be done to Al-Qaeda. Everyone, in fact, agreed, and they participated. Even countries where this hadn't even happened, the United Kingdom, Denmark. So for Israelis to hear this consistent worrying about Palestinians, but when Israelis are being slaughtered, it becomes a footnote. 5 minutes later, nobody cares, nobody remembers, and most people, and a lot of people are even so in doubt about it. That is such a disgrace for Israelis to have to deal with, which is why they're kind of not listening to the UN. They're listening to the United States. The United States is the key actor in all of this. It is the most powerful actor in all of this.
Jotam Confino, thank you for bringing us up to date and expressing just the frustration, I think, there that a lot of us see, that this just seems an intractable problem. We appreciate it. Thanks very much for joining us.